Hello, I'm Kevin with Station A. Today, we're going to talk about new updates coming to California's net metering policy that have caused a bit of commotion in the solar industry, NEM 3.0. We have some people claiming doom and gloom for the California market and others with a brighter outlook. I'm joined by one of my favorite guests to talk clean energy with, Michelle Davis from Wood Mackenzie Power and Renewables Group. And she's back to give us some deep cuts, really an expert and unbiased analyst perspective on how NEM 3.0 will impact the solar market in California. So hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kevin. Great to be back.
It's good to see you again. Happy 2023.
Yeah.
So why don't we kick things off with a very high level basic question, but what is NEM 3.0?
Sure. For those of you who might not be following it as closely as us solar wonks, the basic gist of NEM 3.0 or Net Energy Metering 3.0 is it is California's third generation of changes to how distributed solar projects are compensated. So changes have happened in the past. This is the third iteration. For commercial solar in particular, probably the most important things to know are that export rates for your solar project will change. So under NEM 2.0, you used to get the retail rate for whatever power you were exporting at that given hour. And as customers in California probably are aware, your rate changes depending on the hour of the day. Solar compensation would also change depending on the hour of the day. The biggest change that NEM 3.0 makes to how commercial solar projects get paid is that when you're exporting power to the grid, you no longer get that retail rate. You get a new rate that is pinned to the quote unquote avoided cost of whatever that power is at that given hour. Now, real energy wonks probably have a lot more context and background for what avoided cost might be, but the very basic gist is that it's a California produced number that varies by the hour of the day that sort of approximates what is the value of an additional kilowatt hour that the utility would then avoid. So the sort of long story short is avoided cost rates are much lower than retail rates. They're in the range of the single digits in terms of cents per kilowatt hour, whereas retail rates can vary depending on the hour of the day, anywhere from 15 to 20 cents during off-peak or 40 to 50 cents during on-peak in California.
Great, that's super helpful. And how will the avoided cost be calculated for projects going forward? Like, how will this evolve, or will it evolve?
Yeah, that's a great question. When a project applies to interconnect, you fortunately you get to lock in a set of avoided cost rates for 5 years, the first 5 years of that project's lifetime. So you at least have some certainty for the first 5 years of your project. After that, there are annual updates to the avoided costs, and you just get compensated at whatever those annual updates are. Now, you might be wondering, based on that, well, how am I supposed to predict my financials with only 5 years of certainty? Well, that's a major question for the commercial solar industry. 5 years is not very long. Financiers of these projects are going to wish that that period was longer, and as a result, financing might be more challenging and might get more expensive for commercial solar projects.
What do you estimate the difference or delta being in potential savings on that like net export piece?
That's a good question. We've done a lot of analysis at Wood Mac around what this means for payback periods for residential projects. It's a little harder to make concrete conclusions for commercial solar projects because they vary so much in both size and cost. But anecdotally, what I've heard from folks in the industry is that for projects that have, maybe say a 50-50 ratio of exports to self-consumed power, you could add anywhere from 3 to 7 years to your payback period for a commercial solar project under these new compensation rates. And that's bad news for the commercial solar industry. How sensitive you are to those changes depends a lot on what the load profile of the customer looks like, and the size of your project and production profile of your project. The main outcome for commercial solar projects going forward under this new net metering regime is going to be to maximize self-consumption. You get the most value for self-consumed power. So that is one of the reasons, that's one of the factors that we're considering at Wood Mackenzie when we look to the future of the California commercial solar market, is that projects will be designed to maximize self-consumption and therefore probably made slightly smaller, and there will be more of an incentive to add storage.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that was my next question. Essentially, will every project need to have energy storage to make sense financially?
Under net metering 3.0, adding storage definitely benefits you more than it did under the old regime. So we do anticipate that rates of adding storage will increase in California. You might be surprised to know that attachment rates for storage are not as high as I think folks in the industry would like to think. Even for a highly penetrated state like California that has a lot of storage incentives, in residential, the attachment rate is 11 to 13%. And in commercial, it's in the single digits, like 4 or 5%. It's pretty low. NEM 3.0 will absolutely change that. More folks will be more incentivized to invest more in the battery in order to get the most out of that solar power.
Now, what about other solutions? You just mentioned, potentially sizing projects smaller. So your net exports are less.
Yeah, that's right. So when you have a smaller project, maybe that only takes up, I'm mostly thinking about residential examples here, but usually a project is sized for 100% of the consumption that a customer has in a given year. What we're probably going to see is more projects that are sized to 40 or 50%, because then most of the power that's produced during the day will be used directly by the on-site load. Now, there's actually probably some more creative options that commercial customers can work with. Residential customers tend to have a fairly typical load profile, but I could see some interesting innovations where commercial customers decide to manipulate their load profile in order to get the most out of that solar power and potentially allow them to install bigger projects. But those are all trends that we'll be keeping track of.
Well, I guess another interesting dynamic as well is the fact that the utility rates and tariffs in California are going up significantly.
Yeah.
So then you have that dynamic. You potentially have further cost reductions from a deployment perspective. So solar becoming even more competitive. Do you think that those increasing rates and then slight decreases in solar costs are going to support more deployment?
It would be difficult to parse out, I think, the impacts of higher utility rates from the overall broad impact that NEM 3.0 is going to have on the industry.
Yeah.
In the basic trajectory that we see in California is that over the next year or two, there's going to be a pretty big rush to install projects under NEM 2.0. There's going to be a lot of interconnection applications in the coming 3 months. So if anyone out there is considering a solar project, is close to getting their details finalized, you really should consider getting your interconnection application in before April 15th. That will create a bit of a installation rush over the next year or two, but those decreasing export rates are undoubtedly going to have an impact on the market. So that's where a lot of those messages around doom and gloom are coming from, even with some updates to the final proposal that were made in the last few months. We still expect both the residential and the commercial markets to contract about 30 or 40%, depending on the segment, come 2025, 2024-ish. So yes, I do agree with you that higher utility rates will support deploying more commercial solar, but that will probably be a little bit more of a long-term impact on the market. And in the short term, there's just going to be a lot of movement in the market because of NEM 3.0.
So like you said, if you are thinking about doing a solar project or are close to doing one, you absolutely should move forward quickly right now.
Yes, most definitely.
To try to secure that NEM 2.0
Yes.
legacy policy.
Yes. If you were already planning on having a battery attached, you might actually benefit a little bit more from NEM 3.0. But like we were saying earlier, the stats on attachment rates just demonstrate that that's the minority of installations today.
Do you anticipate other incentives like SGIP that will help make projects more financially viable in this new NEM 3.0 world?
Last fall, there was they approved more budget for the SGIP program, which is good. That's a few $1,000s off a typical like residential solar battery, and similar types of incentives for non-residential batteries. That will definitely help moving forward. Unfortunately, we don't anticipate a lot of cost declines in batteries in the next couple of years because of supply chain and demand. So it's good that SGIP funding did get increased, but I can't say that it will have. SGIP's been around for a while. It's kind of become a market standard. So if anything, it's just kind of continuing the current status quo.
Yeah. So then if I miss that April 14th deadline, what's next for me? Just NEM 3.0 world?
Yes. And maybe just like I was saying earlier, really thinking about how you can maximize self-consumption. Is there a way that you could think about your load profile more strategically to either just get the most out of the solar project or maximize the size of the solar project? Consider a battery. That is one really important outcome that the Public Utilities Commission wanted out of this change to net metering. They want more folks to install storage. It increases resilience and it makes the overall impact of distributed resources on the grid less less volatile, shall we say. When you've got a battery, you can level out your load, contribute a little bit more to making the grid more stable, as opposed to increasing that evening ramp that California has really bad right now.
Yeah, so some load control technologies could be used in conjunction with storage.
Yes.
To potentially maximize or minimize net exports, maximize self-consumption.
Yes.
So just kind of changes potentially what you're optimizing for. And then so if somebody's now like looking at doing a project, how could somebody understand the different costs associated with like a project with storage and a project without storage?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot will vary depending on the size of the project and the type of battery that you want to install. I would say a couple really decent quotes from some really reliable developers are the best way to go. Just get some updated proposals, see what your options are, see what the costs are. Any decent developer today will be able to give you a quote with or without storage. And if anything, over the last several years, as I've talked to developers in the industry, they talk about how prevalent it is that folks want to see a proposal with storage, but then rarely actually enter into a solar plus storage contract. So the industry is ready. It's ready to serve you. It's ready to give you those numbers. They want to install a solar plus storage project for you. So ask for those proposals and ask lots of good questions about them as much as you want.
Or we have that experience with the buyers and our customers who are wanting to move projects forward in California, where they are curious about storage. We go to the market and we through our marketplace solicit solar and storage quotes. Most have moved forward without storage, but one is not, or two are now moving forward with storage, which is interesting. So I think we're starting to see more interest there. Two more questions. But who do you think is the biggest loser in this? And then is there a winner?
In some of the insights that I wrote about in November when the proposal came out, I talked about this very thing. The industry is going to feel some pain for sure. There are companies that are going to go out of business, undoubtedly. I think the losers, if you had to pick some losers, would be folks that currently are not as sophisticated at offering solar plus storage. A lot of installers out there just don't even offer storage at all. So those companies are going to be in a little bit of a bind and may well decide that California is no longer the place for them to do business. The winners are going to be the folks who have invested resources in being sophisticated sellers of solar plus storage. Solar plus storage projects are more complicated. They are harder to communicate the value to the customer. They involve a lot more management. They involve a lot more engineering. So it makes sense that these projects are harder to sell and less people sell them. So the winners are going to be folks who have already invested in that future, have already foreseen that that's going to be the real future of highly penetrated distributed solar markets, is attaching batteries almost all of the time. So in my view, those are going to be the winners. Another winner maybe to note also are folks that have really good procurement relationships for batteries, and frankly, for solar equipment today as well. But batteries are definitely, battery supply is definitely going to be a big issue and a competitive advantage or disadvantage for installers in the California market.
I did want to ask you, basically, given everything that's going on, are you more doom and gloom, or are you whatever the opposite of that would be, like boom and joy, or are you somewhere in between?
I would say I'm somewhere in between.
Yeah.
One of the roles of Wood Mac is to be the objective, clarifying voice. On the one hand, you'll see in our forecasts that we're having contractions of 30 to 40% in the market in the coming couple of years. On the other hand, California still remains the biggest, most successful distributed solar market in the country. So take those pieces of evidence kind of like as you will. It's not going to just utterly implode the California market. The California market is here to stay. It is still going to be a probably, frankly, like 900 megawatt to 1,000 megawatt market, at least for residential, and then sort of 500 to 600 megawatts for commercial for the near future. That's just the outlook for California solar. Will it be a smaller market than before? Absolutely. Will it be a harder market to do business in? Absolutely. But it's still a big market. It's not going away. And it's going to produce a lot of great business for folks.
I think that's great insight. Also, as a New Yorker who lives in California, I would like to remind everybody that there is a world outside of California where there are growing solar markets. So Illinois is in like an incredibly good solar market right now. We're seeing a lot of activity in Texas, in some parts of the South, parts of the Northeast. Yes, while I see, some speed bumps in California, I still see a very good outlook overall for the solar industry in general and for the distributed energy industry as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the main thing that NEM 3.0 solidifies, especially for me as an analyst, is that we're probably entering a future where there's going to be a lot more of this type of solar compensation, where exports are not compensated at the same level as self-consumption. And I think it's probably healthy for the industry to move in that type of direction, maximizing self-consumption from these resources, taking advantage of other types of value streams, such as storage. So that's kind of an important implication in my mind of this policy going forward.
Yeah, it's a great point. When we see folks moving forward with energy storage, like attached to solar, so with solar plus storage, it's largely driven not necessarily by a desire to minimize exports. It's driven more by a desire to leverage a battery to manage some of the other charges on their tariff, more effectively. So I think
Yeah, absolutely.
what'll be interesting, especially on the commercial side, is you have more complex tariff structures, and you have different load profiles, and you have demand charges. So as you start to add solar in this NEM 3.0 world, as you add storage to a solar project, there are additional value streams that you could potentially capture, even demand response value streams as well. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, I don't know. Judging from maybe my tone, I'm definitely more boom and joy, I think.
Good.
I'm just not like a doom and gloom kind of guy anyway. But
I mean, one undoubtable outcome of this policy is that distributed solar projects are just going to have to become more sophisticated.
yeah,
On the one hand, that will be hard. On the other hand, I think it's an overall much better trajectory for the industry. It will help customers have more savings from their projects that are a little bit more reliable. It will help folks to have some resilience benefits depending on how the project is designed. And hopefully, these types of innovations are in the very early stages, but hopefully it will be a catalyst for things like virtual power plants and these projects engaging more in broader market schemes and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. So I think it'll be interesting. I mean, we've had like speed bumps in the past in roadblocks, and
yeah,
I've like
yes,
seen and experienced every single one of those removed or mitigated or overcome. So yeah, so that fuels my optimism.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, great. So it sounds like, Michelle, if I could recap quickly, that if you're thinking about doing a solar project right now, you should absolutely do it and move things forward. And obviously, assuming it's in California, by this April 14th deadline. And what that means is you should file an interconnection application by that deadline, and then you have a long window to actually install the project. What that will do is create actually a very strong market for the next 2 years-ish, right?
Right.
2 to 3.
At least for commercial.
Yeah, because people are then going to be installing these projects.
Yes.
And then we might see some market contraction then, but then at the same time, we'll start to see in this new NEM 3.0 world, solar combined with other things to maximize self-consumption, minimize exports, and ultimately maximize value for the customer.
That's right. That's right. My team doesn't put together these forecasts, but we work very closely with the storage team, and distributed storage is in a fantastic place over the next 4 or 5 years in California. It's going to see more growth than if we didn't see NEM 3.0 implemented.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should be super interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Michelle. Appreciate the time and the perspective as usual, and look forward to talking again.
Of course. Thanks, Kevin.